I want to tell you about a story that I read recently. It was, to be completely open and honest, it was not a true story. It was one that was told to tell a story, to make a point. But it was a story of a mom who was talking to her son. And they were getting ready to set up the manger scene, much like what we see here. And I know that there are some of us who are sitting here, because I would be one of you, who are sitting there going, okay, but the wise men weren't at the manger scene. And so they should be like over there somewhere. I get that. We're gonna just throw that out there. We're gonna get that elephant out of the room. Yes, this is not a completely accurate depiction of what it looked like in the moment of Jesus' birth, but it's a great reminder to us of the people that were called to him to tell his story, that God had reached out to and said, come and see the newborn king. So we threw that out there. Now we know. Now we can move on. But anyway, this is a story of a mom who's talking to her grown son. And they're getting ready to set up their manger scene, and she looks at her son and she says, hey, why don't you call in your kids, because it's time to set up the manger. And the young man, or probably about my age, looks at her and says, wait a second. You want my kids to come in and help you set up the manger? And she looks at him and she goes, well, of course, like they're my grandkids. Of course I want to set. How many grandparents in the room are like, of course I would do that with my grandkids? And he looks at her and he says, but Mom, you never let me help you set up the manger scene. Now, grandparents, once again, how many of you do things with your grandkids that you never allowed your kids to do? Any of you in the room? Oh yeah, we actually got more hands on that one than we did the one before. Kids, how many of you are sitting in here, well, I should say kids my age. So you've got some parents, but you also have kids. How many of you have realized that your parents love your children more than they ever loved you? Any of you ever get, yeah, we all know it. It's fine. We can deal with it eventually. But anyway, he looks at her and says, Mom, you never let me set up the manger. And she looks at him and she goes, well, that's because, do you remember when you were 7 years old, you came in to set up baby Jesus and your fingers were covered in peanut butter? And he looks at her and he goes, Mom, that was one time, and I was 7 years old. Like, you see my kids, right? My kids are filthy dirty. My kids always have something on their hands, and they have the normal conversation that might happen in a moment like this, where they're going back and forth about how, grandparents treat the grandkids compared to how they treated the kids. Until finally, as they're talking about this, and he's not letting go, like, Mom, I was 7. Yes, my fingers were sticky. Yes, they were covered in peanut butter. And she looked at him and she said, well, what you don't realize is Jesus didn't come to get messy. And immediately the mom looks at him and she goes, that's some pretty bad theology, isn't it? That's some pretty bad theology, isn't it? Jesus didn't come to get messy. Now, I don't know what your manger scenes are like in your home if you have a manger scene, but I'm sure there are some of you who have manger scenes who are like, nobody touches that manger scene. Don't you get near the grandkids, kids, I don't care how old you are, you don't get near the manger scene. And others of you have manger scenes that they're just a month or two additional toy that is in your house. That your kids are coming along and, baby Jesus, even though he's in a manger, he's somehow riding on the back of the donkey. All the things are happening. The animals are on top of the manger scene, all the things. It's just another toy in your house. I remember I shared the story with you a couple of years ago of Megan and Scout, I believe it was, right? And the discussion you had about setting up the manger scene, and man, am I going to let my kids help me set up the manger scene, or does it have to look perfect? Because we have this idea of what it all looked like, and in the back of our minds, we're sitting there and we're thinking Jesus didn't come to get messy. And so my manger scene has to look perfect. When we come, I wonder if some of it stems a little bit from how we approach Sunday mornings, that on Sunday morning, and I realize that generational differences definitely come into play here, but Sunday morning is a time where you dress up. It's a time where you put on your Sunday best. For the longest time, it was suit and tie for the guys. It was dresses for the ladies. It was your hair's done, and if you don't have hair, it was polish the head. It was all the things to get ready for Sunday morning. And I wonder if maybe some of that has bled into how we approach what Jesus came to do in the first place. That, if we put on, and I'm not dogging dressing up for Sunday morning at all. My dad wore a suit and tie for the longest time. I'm not sure. I think he might still wear the tie most Sundays, or maybe he's left that behind now too. But there's nothing wrong with dressing up on Sunday morning. There's nothing wrong with dressing with holes in your jeans or dressing with a suit and tie, however many pieces of suit comes in. That part doesn't matter. But I wonder if we start to adopt that into our thinking of what Jesus came to do. And well, if I dress up in my best to come to Jesus, well, then that means Jesus is always, he's dressed to the nines. Jesus is ready to come out and to do all the clean things. Jesus didn't come to get messy. Last week, I shared with you one of my favorite responses in all of Scripture to an interaction with an angel or to an interaction with God, and it was Mary when the angel comes to her and he says, you're about to be with child, and she asks some questions, yes, but eventually her response is, man, I'm the Lord's servant. As your word has spoken, do with me. I love that response that she gives. This week, I want to share with you one of my favorite summaries of all of the Christmas story. See, we read through, and I think it's important to read through the details. Honestly, I think it's important to take some time with your kids and your grandkids and to talk through that, hey, the wise men, they weren't there in that moment. That they came along a little bit later. They followed a star. The shepherds, they listened to the voice of the angels and the song of the angels, and they came and they were there, and Mary was. I think it's important to walk through all of those details, because if we don't walk through those details with our children, who is going to walk through those details? And I don't believe that God put details into Scripture that didn't matter. I believe if they're there, then they came from the voice of God, from the heart of God, and they're details that matter, and we should spend time on those. And so spend some time this Christmas, walk through the details of the story. You might need to spend some time walking through the details of the story, but my favorite point in Scripture where it talks about the Christmas story is actually a one-sentence summary. It's in John chapter 1 and verse 14, and I'm going to quote it to you from the Message translation, where it simply says that the Word became flesh and blood, and it moved into the neighborhood. That the Christmas story is this moment where God on high, Jesus, the Son of God, comes down from his throne, comes down from the castle, comes down from the palace, comes down from the place where the streets are made out of gold, where worship is constantly going on, where he is at the top of everything, and gives all of that up and moves into our neighborhood. Now, we might sit here and go, hey, our neighborhood isn't all that bad. That's not really that big of a deal. Maybe you live in a nice spot. Maybe you've got a nice house. Maybe you're happy with the house that you have. Maybe you're sitting there and you're like, man, for someone like that to move into my neighborhood, like that's saying something about who he is. But because we all have different experiences of what our neighborhood looks like, to give you an idea of what this looks like, this is us deciding that we're going to move onto the streets, or we're going to move into the slums. We're going to move into the spot where all the windows are broken, the paint is peeling, the siding is falling off, the shingles are missing, the doors are laying by their hinges. You walk by and you can smell the house as you walk by it. Like he's moving into that neighborhood. And you might be sitting there going, no, you don't understand. Like my life isn't that bad. Compared to his, your life without him is that bad. And he moves into that neighborhood. Would you do that? Would you give up your home that has the air conditioning, that has the heating, that has the comfy beds, that has the paint that's on the walls, that has all the nice comfy carpet, the nice floors, all of that stuff? Would you move from your home into the inner city slums? Would you give all that up to move there? Now, we talk about that in church sometimes, about how God might call you to a place like that. He might call you to be a missionary that moves to places like that. But in the back of our minds, myself included, most of us are thinking, yeah, but man, I'm glad he didn't call me there. I'm glad he called somebody else there, because I don't know if I could give up what I have. And even if you're sitting there and you're going, but I don't have that much, you've got more than that. Would you give it up? Because Jesus gave it up. That's what Christmas reminds us. Jesus gave all of it up. He gave up the cell phone. He gave up the Wi-Fi. He gave up the cable TV. He gave it all up. He wasn't watching football on Sunday afternoons and hoping the Colts can win another game. He wasn't doing any of that stuff. He gave it all up to move into the neighborhood that had nothing. And that's a beautiful story in and of itself. But he went further than that. Because as we see Jesus, who, we can say things like he didn't come to get messy, or we can think things even if we don't say them like he didn't come to get messy. Jesus absolutely came to get messy. He didn't just move into that neighborhood and then start walking by all those houses and go, man, that house is in bad shape. Man, that house is in bad shape. Man, that house is in bad shape. And then walk into his house, which is all nice and fixed up. His house that's comfortable to live in, the nicest house on the block. He didn't walk into that one. Instead, he walked by and said, that house is in bad shape. And I'm going to do something about it. See, Jesus, he moves into the neighborhood, and then he decides from there that it's time to get to work. It's time to throw on the work clothes. It's time to pull out the hammer. It's time to pull out the saw. It's time to dig in, and it's time to get to work. It's time to improve the lives of those that are around him. And those lives are us. Those lives that he came to improve, those are our lives. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 17, Paul writes to the church in Corinth, he says, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come and the old has gone, for the new is here. Now, I don't know what condition your homes have all been in. I know that we've got some people in this congregation that they go in and their job is they fix up homes. They make them look nicer inside. My third out of the 5 of us brothers, his job is to go in and to fix up homes, to remodel bathrooms. See, Jesus doesn't walk into the bathroom. He doesn't walk by the house and go, oh man, that really stinks. I'm glad I don't have to wash my hands in that sink because that sink is nasty. I'm glad I don't have to take a shower in that tub because, man, there is so much soap scum and mildew in there. That is mold coming out of the corners. That is disgusting. No, Jesus comes in and he starts the ripping out process. He starts getting rid of the stuff that's no good anymore. He starts cleaning things up. And I don't know if you've ever done a job like that. I've remodeled a few bathrooms. I've done some flooring, things like that. I am filthy dirty by the time I'm done with those things. Like if we're doing drywall, now some people are better at doing drywall than I am. I completely understand that. They don't get nearly as messy as I am. But when I'm doing drywall, like I'm covered in drywall when the job is done. When I'm putting down tile, I've got mortar underneath my fingernails because I hate wearing gloves. I've got all the things going on. When I go out into the fields to work, like I come back and Sarah's like, don't come inside. But when I've torn out bathrooms, like I've looked at myself and man, I think that might be a big blob of mold or it could be a big blob of poop on my leg. I'm not really sure what that is, but I'm dirty and I'm gross. And Jesus says, here's what I came to do. I didn't just come to move into the neighborhood. I came to fix up the neighborhood. And not just by giving my money, I came to fix up the neighborhood by going into the home and doing all the dirty work. He doesn't sit there and say, here's what I need you to do before I'm going to come in and fix up this home. I need you to fix up the home so that I can come in and just put on the finishing touches. I have an aunt when I was in college that she would have house cleaners come in to clean her home. But what she would do before the house cleaners would come in is she would hire me to come in and clean her house so that the house cleaners wouldn't see how dirty her house was. I would ask for a show of hands as to how many of you have ever done something like that, but I'm not going to put you through that in case some of you would have to raise your hands. But we do things like that. You know, when we have people over into our homes, we don't want them to see what our home actually looks like, so we make sure that we get everything shoved in a corner or a closet before they come in, because we don't want them to see what things really are like. If we've got kids, we don't want them to see that we have kids. So we hide everything from them. We scrub everything down. There are individuals who they do that with their physical home, but man, don't we do that with this and here, this home? Don't we sometimes communicate to other people that's what they need to do? Is, hey, you need to get right with Jesus before you get right with Jesus. Like, you need to clean up your behavior. You need to clean up your thinking. You need to stop watching all those things before Jesus is he's gonna come and be a part of your life. And many times we do that to ourselves too. Where we sit there and say, I've got to figure things out, and then Jesus is going to be ready. I'm going to be able to be used by Jesus once I can get this fixed. Once I can get my lust problem taken care of, then Jesus is going to be ready to jump in. Once I can get my jealousy problem taken care of, Jesus is going to be ready to jump in. Once I can get rid of bitterness in my life. Once I can fill in the blank. What is that piece that you're sitting there and you're going, once I can fix this, then Jesus can come in. No, Jesus, he's the demo crew. He's the one who comes in and says, here's the spot we need to fix. Because here's the other thing about my experience anyway with remodeling a home or renovating a home. I tend to waste my time on things that don't really matter. Especially if you're someone who you're flipping homes, there are things that you do with the home because it's going to increase the sale, and then there are things that you ignore because it's not going to make a bit of difference. What color the hinges are usually isn't going to impact the sale of your home. What the doorknobs look like, sometimes yes, sometimes no. You got to know the difference. Jesus comes in and says, here's where we need to get to work first. I am the demo crew. I am the remodel crew. You and I are going to work together. I don't need you to fix up this home before I come in. And I don't need you to keep telling other people that they need to fix up their homes before I come in. I want to come in to the mess. Because that's exactly what I came to do. I've got my knee pads. I've got my gloves. And I'm ready to get to work when you're ready to allow me to work. And after he's come into the home, and after he's done all the work, after it looks beautiful, if you've had a home remodeled, if you've had a bathroom remodeled, man, I don't know about you, but once that work is done, I don't let anybody mess up the work that's been done. I mean, when we put in new floors, I'm afraid to let my kids walk in anything but socks on the floor. I don't care if it's rated to have pets and high heels on it. I'm sitting there going, no. I need you to figure out a way to parkour your way from one side of this room to the other so you're not touching that floor on your way over there. Like, it's time we learn how to fly. You better start praying. Oh, we remodeled the bathroom? Okay, well, that bathroom isn't used by anybody anymore. That bathroom is the show bathroom. That's it, nothing else. Of course, we've got to keep living in it. But why would we go back to living in it the way that it used to be lived in? Why would we go back to doing the things that got it in the condition it was in the first place? If your bathroom is full of mold and soap scum and mildew and you come in and you clean it and you have it remodeled, why would we go back to never cleaning it again and never maintaining it? Now, I know that's what we do, but stop and think about it. How does that make any sense? I just spent all this in the material world. I just spent all of this money fixing up my bathroom. So let's go back to the habits that got it to where that I needed to spend all that money in the first place instead of just doing the little bit that I need to do in order to keep it nice. In order to keep it usable, in order to keep it safe and healthy. And again, it's the same thing we can do when Jesus comes into our lives. When Jesus comes in and Jesus does the remodel on our lives, yes, we continue to live, but we don't continue to live the same way that we used to. In Colossians chapter 3 and verses 1 through 3, and this one's not going to be on your screen up there. Paul writes to the church in Colossae, he says, since you have been raised to life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Now, beforehand, our sights, they weren't set on the things of heaven. Before Christ came in and remodels our lives, before he moved into the neighborhood, our sights were set on something completely different. And Christ comes in, he says, set your sights on the things of heaven. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of the earth. For you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God. Set your sights on the things of heaven. One of the enemy's greatest trip-ups that he loves to use is when he sees us allow Christ to come in and do that remodel on our home after he's moved into our neighborhood and he's come along and he said, hey, I want to help fix this house. Is we allow the enemy to tell us, now you can go right back to everything that you were doing before. Because now you're focused on Jesus. But we weren't focused on him before, so how would going back to all of that now keep us focused on him? What idols are you focused on in your life? Now, the enemy doesn't like us to use that word because that word makes us uncomfortable. That word makes us recognize that we're focused on something other than God. But those things of this world that Paul's talking about here, he's talking about the idols that are in our lives. He's talking about the things that we have set our sights on, that if I can just get this, then I'll be happy. Church, we're getting ready to open a whole bunch of Christmas presents in a few weeks. Maybe not everybody in the room, but most of us in this room are getting ready to open up a bunch of Christmas presents. And those presents, they're going to make us happy for a little bit. Maybe it's something that you've been asking for and you are so excited. Maybe you're sitting there and you're going, I hope that I get such and such. I really, really, really want this. And you're going to open it and you're going to be so excited. And most likely, I'm not going to say guaranteed, but many times, 3 months down the road, the excitement from opening that present is gone. And we like to say that happens more with little kids, but adults, it happens to us too. The excitement from the new iPhone, whatever number they're on right now, it's going to wear off because you know what? You're going to come out with a new one. And you're going to want the new one. The excitement from the new smartwatch that you have that's like, man, this is going to change my life. Well, it'll change your life, but the excitement of it, and maybe even the health of it, that may very well start to fade off. It may start to go away. And you're going to have to set your sights on something else that's earthly. You may get to January 1 and say, all right, this is the year that I get that six-pack that I've been working on for the past, for me, 40 years of my life. This is the year that I'm going to be able to go to the beach and be like, there are lines going on here. And you may get there. Some of you young people are like, I've had those since I was like born. This is not, I don't understand why you old people think this is such a big deal. But there's going to become a point where that doesn't bring you happiness and satisfaction anymore. There may even come a point where it just becomes a chore to keep it. This thing that I thought was going to make my life perfect. This thing that I thought was going to have everybody look at me and go like, man, that person has it together. In church, there are so many things. I like to pick on Apple, and I like to use the iPhones. I know a lot of people like smartwatches. I like smartwatches. I know I've been dreaming about a six-pack since, I was 16 years old. What is it for you? Is there something in your life that you have set your sights upon? That you're like, this is maybe it's your retirement fund, that if I can just get my retirement fund set to such and such. If I can just get my emergency, like forget the retirement fund, if I can just get my emergency funds all set up, then I'll be able to be comfortable and I'll be able to be full of peace. You know, I took the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace course years and years ago. And I remember even him walking through it and saying, hey, setting up your emergency fund. What's your emergency fund? For those of you who haven't gone through Dave Ramsey or haven't heard much about him, you've got enough funds to live off of for 3 months, that if you lost your job or you got hurt and you had no income for 3 months, you're good to go. You've got it all set aside. But even he says that once you get that emergency fund all set up, all you want to do is build it up more. You don't want to touch it. If something comes along, it's for breakdowns, like if your washer or your dryer break down, hey, I've got the money to go out and pay cash for it, but the washer and the dryer break down, you're like, I don't want to touch that, because this is my peace and my comfort zone. In fact, I want to build that up more and more and more. Yeah, the person across the street, they need a washer and dryer, but I need to protect my emergency fund over here. My person across the street doesn't have food in their closet, but I need to protect my emergency fund. He even says it. The guy teaching it says it. That you'll get it, and it won't be enough. It'll need to be bigger. It'll need to provide more peace so that now I can go 6 months. Now I can quit my job, and I can be fine. What are you setting your sights on? What earthly thing are you setting your sights on? That Jesus is saying, no, this is why I came along in the first place, was to remodel all that out of there. So that you'll quit setting your sights on things that aren't going to give you what they promise. So that you'll quit setting your sights on things that once you have them or once you accomplish them, all you want is more. Now, is there anything wrong with putting a little savings aside? I don't think so. Depending on your heart behind it, I don't think so. Is there anything wrong with wanting to improve your fitness? I don't think so. Is there anything wrong with wanting a phone that works? Well, don't get the iPhone, but I don't think so. Until those things become the thing that we're setting our sights on. Those things become the thing that we're counting on to bring us peace and comfort and joy in our lives. Until those things become the thing that we pursue more than we pursue Him. Many idols in life are good things until they become the idol in our life. Until they become the thing that we can't live without. That's when they become the thing that Paul's telling us, no. You were created new. You were created for something better. You were created for bigger dreams and a bigger purpose. See, Jesus, again, we can picture him kind of like Ricky Bobby likes to picture him. A sweet little, how much did he weigh? I know some of you know. I don't remember what it was, 8 pounds, 6 ounces, something like that. Somebody, come on, help me out here. Huh? 7 pounds, 6, we're going to go with it. I don't know if you all were afraid to admit that you watched Talladega Nights or what. But we can get stuck picturing him as a little baby. We can get stuck picturing him as somebody, as God who came into this world solely to be worshiped and adored while we're dressed in our best. And forget that he was someone who came from the very beginning of his time here on earth. It was messy. He came to get messy so that you and I could get clean. He came to put in the work so that you and I could have these temples that are pure inside, that are holy, that are set apart inside, so that we could walk around without the guilt of the things that we'd done. See, Christmas, we tell the story of a manger, but Christmas points to the cross, church. And it doesn't get much messier than a cross. Christmas points to the moment when Jesus said, I came so that you could have life. I came so that you could be made new. Yes, we worship him. He has earned every bit of our worship, and he would have earned it whether he ever did anything for us or not. He deserves our worship solely based on who he is. And yet, he said, I'm going to come and I'm going to move into your neighborhood. I'm going to come down from my kingdom, and I'm going to walk among each and every one of you. And I'm not just going to have you look at me and be like, man, I need to dress like that guy over there. But no, I'm going to come into your home, and I'm going to fix your home up. I'm going to do the dirty work. If you'll allow me to come, I'm going to do the dirty work, and I'm going to clean your life up. And then he asks us, why would you ever want to go back? After I've done the work in your home, why would you ever want to go back? And church, that's the message that we get to take out to all of those around us. That's the message that not only do we get to hear it in here on a Sunday morning, but that's the message that we get to share with everybody. Not walk out and be like, man, this world needs to get its act together. No, this world needs to allow Jesus to get a little bit messy in their lives. And Jesus will get their act together. They're not going to do it on their own. We're not going to do it on our own. Jesus came to get messy.